Hello again. We are continuing our study of I Am a Church Member by Tom Rainer. This one is I Will Pray for My Church Leaders. He uses pastor and church leaders kind of synonymous here and going back and forth, and that's a good thing. But I would remind you that even if you're in a church like ours where we only have one paid staff, we have several that are in volunteer positions, but they're still leading, and they do wonderful jobs, and they don't get. Obviously, they don't get near enough paid for it because we're not paying them. I pray one day we can fix that because it's hard work and it'd be nice to be able to give them something. But anyway, so as he opens up, he gives a story that it hurts a little bit to read because it is very. I mean, he says it's a true story, and I believe him because I've known many people and I've been in similar situations where you just your heart hurts, right? And there's always that one complaint at like the most inopportune time. But anyway, but the point is simply, right? Pray for the pastor, pray for the church families or church leaders, and we need to be in prayer. I need to be praying for the other volunteers just as I pray for the congregants. But you guys need to be praying for your pastor. If you're in my church, please pray for me. And some of you are like, you darn right he needs prayer because he's not doing a good job. Well, that's part of why you need to pray. But anyway, but pray for him and his family, right? That's a joke. Y'all don't get up in arms. All right. Pray for him and his family. One of the most convicting and challenging verses for pastors is 1 Timothy 3:5. If anyone does not know how to manage his own household, will he take care of God's church? And when he says one of the most convicting and challenging verses, he's absolutely right. That is such a hard one, and for me especially, I have seen how a pastor's family just ruins his ministry. I had a pastor one time. I will not name names because his wife, I mean, quite literally drugged the church down, openly, publicly, kind of on the news type stuff, where you just shake your head like, how in the world? I knew one pastor who said that before I got married, he made a comment about you got to make sure you choose your wife well because sometimes your wife will direct your ministry, and that was like wait, what do you mean? But now I understand, right? And thankfully my wife has done a wonderful job. She wasn't sure about this whole being a pastor's wife thing, but she's working out really well. So anyway, and that's not just me sucking up; that's legit. He says he's heard countless pastors worry about and struggle over their families. Yeah, and we don't. It's talking about living in a glass house or the demands of the church neglect the family, the anguish when critics direct barbs at family members. Oh my gosh, like I would go nuts if somebody started to ridicule my family because they were mad at me. So just a heads up, don't do that, right? Like you can come talk to me one-on-one. If you want to yell at me, whatever, that's fine. Do that. But oh Lord have mercy if you go after my family. And that's not just because like me saying I'll get on to you. I'm saying my wife will probably rip you a new one. And y'all think she's all sweet and kind, but just I've seen her angry, just saying. Anyway, but we are church members. We must be the prayer intercessors for pastors and their families. Few families face the kinds of pressures and expectations as the families of pastors. Yes, you're darn right. Son of a minister, man, I heard all that, you're in a glass house, everybody's watching you, you're the example, and it's hard, man. It's hard being a minister's kid or a preacher's kid, and so like for my own kids, like it's something I've kind of worried about a little bit with them, but try to work through like, hey, this is where we're at, this is the reality of the situation, and it's not right. I'll go ahead and say it. There's nothing that makes a pastor's kid perfect. That's not how it works, right? It's not because I'm a pastor that my kids are going to be perfect. Mine are far from it because every kid is far from it. And for those of you who are like, well, my kid's perfect. Well, you're not paying attention. So, all right. But anyway, pray for his protection. So pray for, because when we talk about, he's got to be hospitable, above reproach, self-controlled, right? These lists of qualifications, and then he talks about, was it 1 Timothy 3? Furthermore, he must have a good reputation among outsiders so he does not fall into disgrace and the devil's trap. And a lot of y'all haven't really thought about that, and so you should, right? The devil's trap. And this it's a little bit scary, but then I remember things like, greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world. The devil does set about traps because he's got, if he brings the leader down, right, then he doesn't have to worry about the rest of the church. Many seminary students are told the moment you take on the mantle of being a pastor, there's just a giant bullseye on you at that point. And it's very true. And so we have to be aware of that. So as congregants, it's helpful that you guys pray. It helps us that you pray, but it also helps yourself because you don't want to be a tool of the devil to bring about that trap. Just saying. I mean, think about it, right? Where does the pastor spend most of his time? Who's most likely to embody that devil's trap? It's not going to be some random person on the street, right? It's going to be somebody in the church. So the devil's powerful, but God is so much more powerful. And God, in ways we don't always understand fully, works through the prayers of believers. He's absolutely right. And a lot of times we don't get it. We pray and we know it works. And things just things just happen. We call those miracles because God is working. At the last part, on the pledge, he says to be willing to pray for them 5 minutes a day. That is all. Sure, you can pray longer if you want. He talks about a guy that prayed an hour a day when he was a pastor. You pray as long as God calls you to pray, but I would say 5 minutes is enough, right? Jesus told us not to babble on like the Gentiles, so there's nothing super spiritual about babbling on and on and on with God, but if we think of prayer as a conversation, then there is something very spiritual about voicing things with God and then listening for God to respond. That is a wonderful thing that you should do. You should do all the time, but especially about your pastor. Because if you're listening to God as you're praying, it might be that God says, hey, do this thing. Help him out in this way. And that would be wonderful. And I know some people have done that because I've had people just bless our families. And not just like with stuff, right? And although I'll be honest, living in the farm community, having milk and eggs and bread, dropped on our doorstep, that's always a good day, right? But not just that, but just the encouragement, the text out of nowhere. One of my favorites, and I'll be honest, I don't try to play favorites, but this guy's one of my favorites. He texted me the other day. He was just like, hey man, if you need a vent, you come on over and we'll vent. And I was like, oh man, I love that guy. Anyway, so I'm gonna get all teary-eyed here in a second. Anyway. But pray for your pastors because we need it. We desperately need it, and not just for our benefit, but I would argue it's actually for the members' benefit too. That the more time as members we spend in prayer about what it is that is bugging us or things that are weighing us down, then God will actually open up avenues of showing you where our faults are, and so if. It might be that your pastor's wrong, and God will show you how to lovingly correct them and point them in the right direction. Or it could be that you're wrong, and God will point that out as well. But you never know if you don't pray, right? So pray, be in prayer. All right, you guys have a wonderful day, and look forward to next chapter.